A prostitute standing outside a motel in a small town saw a 70-plus-year-old man walking past. She hasn't had a customer for a while, so she whistles at him and says, "Hey, would you like to have some fun time with me?" The old man said, "But I won't be able to." Prostitute. "Come on, man. Give it a try." The old man says, "Okay." They go in. The old man whips out his dick and f***s the daylights out of her for 30 minutes. When he's done, the prostitute, all exhausted and tired, says, "But you said you won't be able to pay you," replied the old man. Dad: "Why did your teacher smack you today?" Timmy: "I just asked her a perfectly valid question she couldn't answer, so she got mad and smacked me." Dad: "And what exactly did you ask?" Timmy: "I asked why a bra is singular when it covers two things, but panties are plural when they only cover one thing." Two women were bragging about their dogs at the park. First woman says proudly, "My dog is so smart, he fetches the newspaper every morning before I even ask." The second woman smiles and replies, "I know." The first woman blinks. "Wait, how do you know?" The second woman shrugs. "My dog told me." A guy thought his wife was cheating on him. He waited for her to leave that night and jumped in a cab to follow her. By following her, he found out she was working in a whorehouse. The guy says to the cabbie, "Want to make $100? The cabbie says, "Sure, what do I have to do?" The guy replies that all the cabbie has to do is go inside the whorehouse, grab his wife, put her in the back of the cab, and take them home. The cabbie goes in. A couple of minutes later, the whorehouse door gets kicked open, and the cabbie starts dragging out this woman who is kicking, biting, punching, and fighting all the way to the cab. The cabbie opens the door to the cab, throws the girl inside, and tells the man, "Here, hold her." The man looks down at the girl and yells to the cabbie, "This ain't my wife." The cabbie replied, "I know, it's mine. I'm going back in for yours." A wealthy old man was lying on his deathbed when he realized he had never written a will. He called his lawyer to set things in order. "I want 25% of my money to go to charity," the old man said. "After all, I've taken so much I should give something back." "How generous," the lawyer replied. "I also want 25% to go to my son. He's been waiting for the day he could get his hands on my money." "Understood," the lawyer said. "And the rest," the old man continued, "should go to my wife, on the condition that she remarries after I die." The lawyer, puzzled, asked, "That's an unusual request. Why do you want her to remarry?" The old man smiled faintly. "Because I want at least one man to regret my death." George raises his beer mug in the air and says, "Here's to spending the rest of my life having sex with my wife." The bar is filled with whistles and claps, and the bartender even gives him a ribbon that says, "Best Toast of the Month." When George gets home, he shows his wife, Linda, the ribbon. "And what exactly was your award-winning toast?" she asks. George thinks for a while and says, "Here's to spending the rest of my life going to church with my wife." The next day, when George is at work, Linda is walking down the street when she runs into Ted, one of George's drinking buddies. "Your husband sure gave an awesome toast last night," says Ted. "I know," replies Linda, "and he told me about it. It kind of surprised me because almost every time he goes down there, he falls asleep. A few weeks ago, I had to pull him by the ear to get him to come." A man's walking home late at night when he sees a woman in the shadows. $20, she says. He's never been with a prostitute before, but he decides what the hell. They are going at it for a minute when all of a sudden a light flashes on them. It's a policeman. "What's going on here, people?" asks the officer. "I'm making love to my wife," the man answers indignantly. "Oh, I'm sorry," says the cop. "I didn't know." "Well," said the man, "to tell the truth, neither did I until you flashed that light on her face." A mother was cooking dinner when her daughter walked in and asked, "Mom, where do babies come from?" The mother thought for a moment and said, "Well, Mommy and Daddy love each other very much. One night they hug and kiss, and that's how a baby starts to grow. The little girl looked confused, so the mother added, Daddy and Mommy's special parts come together to make a baby. The daughter nodded thoughtfully, then said, Oh, I get it. But the other night, when I came into your room, I saw Daddy's special part in your mouth. What do you get from that? The mother smiled and replied, Jewelry, sweetie, jewelry. Teacher, Johnny, sweetheart, why do you look so sad today? Johnny, looking gloomy, My mom's at the hospital and my dad's at the police station. Teacher, concerned, Oh no, that's awful. Would you like to go home early? Johnny, Yes, please. After he leaves, the teacher looks at the class and asks softly, Does anyone know what happened to Johnny's parents? A classmate casually replies, Yeah, his mom's a nurse and his dad's a cop. They're just at work. A taxi passenger tapped the driver on the shoulder to ask him a question. The driver screamed, lost control of the car, nearly hit a bus, went up on the footpath, and stopped inches from a shop window. For a second, everything was quiet in the cab. Then the driver said, Look, mate, don't ever do that again. You scared the living daylights out of me. The passenger apologized and said, I didn't realize that a little tap would scare you so much. The driver replied, Sorry, it's not really your fault. Today is my first day as a cab driver. I've been driving a funeral van for the last 25 years. Two old men are sitting shooting the breeze, and one says he has a riddle for the other. What's green, hangs on the wall, and whistles? The second man thinks long and hard, and finally admits that he is stumped, and asks for the answer, to which the first man replies, A herring. But a herring isn't green. So you paint it green, and a herring doesn't hang on the wall. So you hang it on the wall. A herring does not whistle. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. A man walks into a cafe and says, Can I have a full breakfast, but cooked my way? Sure, says the server. I want bacon so burnt it's like black coal, sausages so rubbery you could bounce them off the floor, scrambled eggs full of shell like egg praline, and tomatoes, mushrooms, and beans are so overcooked they taste like greasy slime. The server frowns. That's ridiculous. You think I've got time to do all that? The man shrugs. You had time yesterday. A priest was finishing his years of missionary work deep in the jungle when he realized he had never taught the locals any English. So, on his last day, he took the chief for a walk. Pointing to a tree, he said, This is a tree. The chief nodded. Tree. Encouraged, the priest pointed to a rock. This is a rock. Again, the chief nodded. Rock. Just then, they heard rustling in the bushes. Peeking through, they saw 2 natives enthusiastically busy. Flustered, the priest blurted out, Man riding a bike! The chief calmly pulled out his blowgun and shot them both dead. The priest was horrified. I've spent years teaching you kindness and peace. How could you just kill them? The chief replied, My bike. A Scottish guy goes on a skiing trip in Canada. After a long day tumbling down the slopes and nearly taking out 3 snowboarders, he heads to the lodge bar for a well-earned drink. 5 whiskeys in, he glances up and sees a giant stuffed animal with antlers mounted on the wall. He squints and slurs, What in the name of haggis is that? The bartender replies, That's a moose. The Scotsman's eyes go wide. Dear God, how big are the cats in this country? I called my parents the other day. Just a regular check-in. But instead of my mom picking up, I got this wild voicemail. Hello? You've reached the Grandparents Command Center. We're either not home or pretending not to be. Please listen carefully. Our patience has limits. The message continued. If you're one of our children and need something, press 1 to be sorted by birth order. Need babysitting? Press 2. Want to borrow the car? Press 3. Laundry or ironing? Press 4. Dropping off the grandkids overnight? Press 5, school pickups. Press 6, Sunday dinner or food delivery. Press 7, planning to eat here. Press 8, need money. Press 9. Then it said, but if you're calling to invite us out to dinner, a movie, or anywhere fun, please stay on the line. We are very available. Beep! Then my mom's voice whispered sweetly. Just kidding. Kinda. Leave a message. It's been 3 days. I still haven't left a message. I'm trying to think of something that doesn't land me in options 1 through 9. After his exam, the doctor said to the elderly man, Doctor, you're in good health. Any medical concerns? Old man, well, yes. After I have love, I usually feel cold and chilly. But after the second time, I'm hot and sweaty. The doctor then examined the man's elderly wife and said, Doctor, you seem perfectly healthy. Any concerns? Wife, no, none at all. Doctor, your husband says he feels cold and chilly after love the first time, but hot and sweaty after the second. Any idea why? Wife, oh, that crazy old fart. That's because the first time is in January and the second time is in August. A little boy goes shopping with his mother and waits outside the ladies' dressing room. Bored, he starts sliding his hand up a mannequin's skirt. Get your hand out of there, his mother shouts. Don't you know women have teeth down there? The boy yanks his hand back, terrified. And for the next 10 years, he believes it. At 18, he gets a girlfriend. One night, while her parents are out, she invites him over. After an hour of kissing and groping, she says, You know, you could go a little further. What do you mean? He asks. Why don't you put your hand down there? She says, pointing at her crotch. Hell no, he blurts out. You got teeth down there. Don't be ridiculous, she laughs. There's no teeth down there. Yes, there are. My mom told me. Here, see for yourself, she says, pulling down her pants. He takes a good long look and finally says, Well, with the condition of those gums, I'm not surprised. At the dinner table, a curious son asks, Dad, how many types of boobs are there? Dad thinks for a moment and says, Well, son, women go through 3 stages. In their 20s, breasts are like melons, round and firm. In their 30s and 40s, they're like pears. Still nice, but starting to hang a bit. After 50, they're like onions. Onions? The son asks. Yep, Dad nods, because when you see them, they make you cry. His wife and daughter glare at him. Then the daughter asks, Mom, how many types of are there? Mom smiles sweetly. Well, dear, men go through 3 stages, too. In their 20s, the is like an oak tree, strong and mighty. In their 30s and 40s, like a birch tree, flexible but reliable. After 50, it's like a Christmas tree. A Christmas tree? The daughter asks. Mom grins. Yep. Dead from the root up, and the balls are just for decoration. A police officer spots a car flying down the highway and turns on the siren. Instead of stopping, the driver speeds up 80, 90, 100 miles per hour. Finally, the guy realizes he's not going to win and pulls over. The officer walks up to the window and says, Look, it's been a long day. My shift ends in 10 minutes. Give me one good reason for driving like that, and I might let you go. The driver sighs and says, Honestly, officer, about a week ago, my wife ran off with a cop. When I saw your lights, I thought you were bringing her back. The officer just stood there, trying not to laugh. A woman boards a flight to Detroit and sits in economy. Once the seatbelt sign goes off, she spots an empty seat in first class and slides right in like she owns the place. The flight attendant approaches. Ma'am, your ticket is for economy. She smiles and says, I'm staying right here. The co-pilot comes over. Sorry, you have to return to your seat. She shrugs. Nope. Even the captain tries. No luck. Finally, another passenger says, let me try. I'm married. I speak fluent, stubborn. He walks over, whispers something in her ear, and she instantly jumps up and walks back to economy. Everyone stares in shock. What did you say to her? The attendant asks. The man grins. I just told her first class isn't going to Detroit. An atheist was hiking through the woods, marveling at nature. What majestic trees! What powerful rivers, what beautiful animals, he said. Suddenly, he heard a rustling in the bushes, and out charged a massive 7-foot grizzly. The man ran for his life, but the bear was gaining fast. Just as he tripped and fell, he looked up to see the bear raising a giant paw. In a panic, he shouted, "Oh my God!" Everything froze. Time stopped. The forest went silent. A bright light appeared, and a voice said, You've denied me your whole life, taught others I don't exist. And now you call on me? The man paused and replied, It would be wrong to suddenly become a believer, but could you make the bear a Christian? Very well, said the voice. The light disappeared. The forest returned to normal. Then, the bear lowered his paw, bowed his head, and said, Lord, thank you for this meal I'm about to receive. Amen. Calling in sick is always awkward. Even when it's legit, you feel like your boss assumes you're faking it. So when I had a very real injury recently, I still told a half-truth. Head injury, staying home, hope to be in tomorrow. Simple, clean, no details. Because the actual story, well, let's just say it didn't feel HR safe. See, a week earlier, my wife decided we had to adopt a kitten. Cute, tiny, playful. No problem, at first. But one morning, I was in the shower when she yelled from the kitchen, Honey, the garbage disposal is dead again. Can you reset it? I yelled back. You know where the button is. I know, but I'm scared. What if it turns on and pulls me in? Really? A garbage disposal vacuuming her in like a black hole? But fine. I got out, dripping wet, naked, grumpy. I marched to the kitchen, muttering, and crouched under the sink to press the button, hoping my dramatic nudity would make a statement. That's when disaster struck. Turns out the kitten had wandered in, and as I crouched there, fully exposed, she spotted, well, let's call them dangling targets. With the speed of a jungle predator and the curiosity of a toddler, she pounced. Needle claws. Sensitive flesh. Pain. Instinct took over. I shot up straight like a rocket, unfortunately into the hard underside of the sink. Blackout. When I came to, I was on the kitchen floor, naked, dazed, and surrounded by paramedics trying not to laugh out loud. My wife, of course, had filled them in completely. Days later, when I finally returned to work, everyone wanted to know how I hit my head. I just shook my head and said, No, don't ask. It still hurts. One colleague smirked and said, Cat got your tongue? No, Karen. The cat got something else entirely. Alice was supposed to bake a cake for the church ladies' bake sale, but she completely forgot until the very last minute. Panicking, she whipped up an angel food cake, but when she pulled it from the oven, the center had completely collapsed. No time to bake another, she muttered. Desperate, she searched the house for something to fix the sagging middle, and then, brilliant idea or not, she grabbed a roll of toilet paper from the bathroom, plunked it in the center, and slathered on icing until it looked perfectly presentable. Crisis averted. Off to church it went. Just to be safe, Alice gave her daughter money and strict instructions. Be the first in line. Buy that cake. Bring it home. No questions. Well, the daughter arrived a little late. The cake was already sold. Alice was mortified. The next day, she went to a friend's house for a bridge game. Afterward, they were served lunch and, of course, dessert. To Alice's horror, there it was, her cake. She nearly jumped up to explain, but before she could say a word, someone at the table gasped. "Wow, what a gorgeous cake!" Alice froze, and then the hostess smiled proudly and said, "Thank you, I baked it myself." While standing near the edge of a cruise ship deck, an elderly woman clutched her wide-brimmed hat with both hands. The ocean breeze was fierce, and the wind kept tugging at everything it could grab. A polite but flustered gentleman walked up and said, "Excuse me, ma'am. I don't mean to be rude, but your dress is flying up quite a bit." She smiled, unbothered. "Oh, I know. But if I let go of this hat, it'll be halfway to the Bahamas." He hesitated, then whispered, "Well, I hate to point this out, but, you're not wearing any underwear." The woman raised an eyebrow, looked down briefly, then met his eyes and replied, "Son, I'm 76 years old. There's nothing down there I'm trying to hide. But this hat? I just bought it." There was a bar in town with a running challenge that had stood undefeated for years. Behind the counter was Big Ray, the bartender, a man with 4 arms like tree trunks. His party trick? He'd take a lemon, squeeze it with one hand until it was bone dry, and then slam the pulp down on the bar. The challenge? If anyone could squeeze even one more drop out of Ray's already squashed lemon, they'd win $1,000 cash. Over time, many had tried. Bodybuilders, mechanics, farmers, even a guy who claimed he crushed coconuts for fun. All failed. One day, a quiet little man walked in. He was barely 5'6", wore a wrinkled suit, thick glasses, and had a voice like a winded mouse. "I'd like to try the lemon challenge," he said politely. The bar roared with laughter. Ray, amused, played along. He picked a lemon, crushed it dry in one powerful squeeze, and dropped the remains in front of the man. Everyone leaned in. The man picked up the lemon, held it in one hand, and squeezed. One drop, then another, and another. By the time he was done, 6 drops had fallen into the glass. The bar went silent, then erupted in cheers. Ray handed over the envelope of cash and asked, still stunned, "What do you do, man? Some kind of secret agent? A martial arts master?" The little man smiled and replied, "Nope. I work for the tax office." 4 friends spend weeks planning the perfect girls' getaway: shopping, casinos, massages, facials. 2 days before the trip, Mary's husband puts his foot down. "You're not going." Her friends are upset but leave without her. When they check into the hotel, they find Mary in the bar, sipping wine. "Mary, how long have you been here? How did you get away?" She smiles. "Last night I was on the couch when my husband came up behind me, covered my eyes, and said, 'Guess who?' I pulled his hands away, and he was wearing nothing but his birthday suit. He took my hand, led me to the bedroom, candles, rose petals everywhere, perfume in the air. On the bed, handcuffs and ropes. He said, 'Tie me up and do whatever you want.' So, here I am." At his nursing home birthday party, a spry old man was shuffling around with a grin, asking everyone, "Guess how old I am? Go on, guess." One resident said, "I don't know. 81, 82. Nope, I'm 95, he said proudly, laughing to himself. A little later, he spotted an old woman sitting quietly in the hallway. He walked up to her and said, "Hey, guess how old I am?" Without a word, she unzipped his pants, reached in, felt around thoughtfully for a few seconds, and said, "I'd say you're about 95. He was stunned. Wow, that's amazing. How could you possibly know that? She shrugged. I heard you tell that other guy. A man is about to enter a meeting at work when he realizes that he forgot some important paperwork. He calls home so that his wife can retrieve them. A strange woman answers. The guy asks, "Hello? Who is this?" Confusion evident in his tone. "This is the maid," answers the woman. "But we don't have a maid," exclaims the man. "Oh, your wife just hired me this morning," explains the woman. "Well," replies the man, "this is her husband. Can I speak with her?" There is a brief pause before the maid responds, her voice a bit hesitant. "Your wife is upstairs in the bedroom with another man. I just assumed it was her husband." Fuming, the man yells, "Listen! Go upstairs right now and yell to my wife that her husband just drove up in the driveway." The maid agrees and sets down the phone. Moments later, she picks the phone back up, her voice now frantic. "Sir, I did as you asked, and the man jumped out of the bedroom window and missed the pool." A stunned silence fills the line. The man finally asks, "Pool? Is this 3106623? A blonde was driving through a heavy snowstorm when she started to lose her sense of direction. Visibility was terrible, but instead of panicking, she remembered her dad's advice. If you ever get caught in a snowstorm, just find a snowplow and follow it. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a snowplow appeared ahead of her. She pulled in behind it and started following. She followed it through turns, down side streets, around parked cars, for nearly 45 minutes. Eventually, the plow came to a stop. The driver climbed down, walked over to her car, and asked, "Excuse me, ma'am, why are you following me?" She smiled and said, "Oh, my dad told me that if I ever got stuck in a snowstorm, I should follow a snowplow." The driver nodded slowly and said, "Well, I just finished clearing the Walmart parking lot. Want to follow me over to Best Buy now?" There were these twin sisters, both turning 100 years old at St. Luke's nursing home. The local newspaper sent a photographer to snap a picture of the Century Club sisters. Now, one of the twins was hard of hearing, but the other could still hear a pin drop. The photographer cheerfully said, "Ladies, could you please sit on the couch?" The deaf one turned to her sister and yelled, "What did he say?" Her sister replied, "He says to sit on the couch." They shuffled over and sat down. "Now scoot a little closer," said the photographer. "What did he say?" "He says to scoot closer." So they wiggled up next to each other. "Perfect. Hold still for a second, I just need to focus," the photographer said. "What did he say this time?" "He says he's gonna focus." The deaf twin's eyes widened and she shouted, "Oh my God! Both of us!" The chief of staff of the U.S. Air Force was fed up with the recruiting crisis, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. He ordered a nearby base to host an open house and invited all eligible young men and women. On the big day, as he stood proudly next to a brand-new F-15 fighter jet, he noticed two young men approaching, identical twin brothers, both looking like they'd been sculpted straight out of a Marine Corps poster. Impressed, the general walked up, shook their hands, and said, "Gentlemen, welcome. What skills can you bring to the Air Force?" The first twin stood tall and said, "I pilot." The general lit up. "Outstanding! Get this man processed immediately," he barked to his aide, who whisked the first twin away like he was pure gold. Turning to the second brother, the general asked, "And what about you, son? What do you bring to the Air Force?" The second twin said proudly, "I chop wood." The general blinked. "Chop wood? Son, this is the U.S. Air Force. We don't need wood choppers. What else can you do?" The young man shrugged. "I chop wood." Now clearly annoyed, the general snapped, This is the 21st century, not a lumber camp. We don't need anyone chopping wood. The twin sighed, pointed toward his brother being escorted away, and said, "Well, dang, you hired him. He can't pilot till I chop it." Ruth finally brought her boyfriend Bernie home to meet her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bloom. Over dinner, Mr. Bloom asked politely, "So, Bernie, what do you do for a living?" Bernie replied modestly, "Well, I own some property." Before Mr. Bloom could react, Ruth jumped in. "Some, property?" "Daddy, he owns an entire chain of booming retail stores." Impressed, Mr. Bloom nodded. "And where do you live, Bernie?" Bernie smiled. "Just an apartment in the city." Ruth rolled her eyes. "An apartment? It's a penthouse in the most expensive building in Manhattan." Mrs. Bloom leaned in. "And what are your future plans?" Bernie said, "Well, I'm hoping to expand." Before he could finish, Ruth chimed in proudly, "He's about to buy Bloomingdale's, Mom." At that moment, Bernie suddenly sneezed. Mrs. Bloom asked sweetly, "Oh dear, do you have a cold?" Ruth grabbed a napkin and dramatically declared, "A cold! Mom, Bernie's got pneumonia."